allow everyone to take their seats. We could kick off. I have got a hard finish for 1 p.m. today because we've got a member of the cabinet visiting and I need to join him. But hopefully, with a bit of help from others that help me chair the meeting, we can get through everything you need to get through. I'm just going to kick off with an open statement, if I may, about the meeting and my priorities before we go into some questions. When I hand back to Councillor Huxtable and Councillor Barrow to help chair the questions. Thank you. So, thank you very much. Very pleased to be here today. I understand the importance of scrutiny in terms of a role in a position like this, and I welcome the discussion that we're about to have. And I hope as we move forward, these conversations can help inform policy, help shape future agendas, and identify things that, as an organisation, we may need to do differently. In terms of my role and sense of purpose, I've been very, very clear about my priorities. I have 4 key priorities, and they are creating an environment where we create jobs for everyone across this region in a way we've not done that before, giving it focus. Homes for everyone by having a commitment to delivering more affordable and social housing than we've had before. Indeed, I want to set out the most ambitious programme we have for decades. We need economic growth for everyone, and that is a key target aligned to the government priorities around growth. And we've not had growth to any great extent for almost a decade in this region. And indeed, since 2017, our economic performance against Manchester is declined by almost 15%. So in 2017, our economy, in terms of its productivity per head, was around 5% behind Manchester's. It's now 15%. So not only do you need growth to help everyone in this region get access to better jobs and better paid jobs, we've got to get an economy that's far more competitive than it is today, because the region that is most like ours nationally, the region against we need to be at least equally competitive, is now running 15% ahead of this region. That disparity is blighting the lives of opportunities for all of our people, and that needs to change. And finally, my 4th big item on the agenda is transport for everyone. And you will be fully aware of my plans around bus franchising. That's the biggest difference we can make to people's lives in this region. 80% of people in this region that use public transport use the bus network, and the bus network is failing our communities, and it's failing some of our communities more than anyone else. So it is about having a mayoralty and political leadership that drives forward and makes a big difference for everyone, not trickle down, not limited to supporting those places that are doing best. And it is about creating a prosperous region where everyone benefits. I'm also working very differently to my predecessor. It's not just about different priorities and focus. It's also about doing things differently. I know there's some questions which like to come up around the way we're doing governance differently, but it is an approach that I've set out that is aiming to be totally collaborative. And that means working really very, very closely with the council leaders, in particular across this region, in a very, very different way. And I'm really pleased with the progress we've made and the alignment we've got around the key priorities that will improve the lives for everyone here. I want my mayoral to be far more transparent and open, and decisions that are made on key projects need to be spelt out very clearly. And I want you and every member of the public to have absolute clarity on the priority projects we've got, where those priority projects are in decision-making processes, the money allocated to them, and indeed their completion times. And that has not been the case in the past, and that will change, and it changes now. Finally, we need to make some long-term decisions about how we're going to rebuild the fabric of this region. It's not just an economy works, but we've got a skill system that is failing our people, and our young people in particular, with twice as many young people out of work than the national average. In some parts of the region, it's even worse than that. We cannot continue to fail the people and the young people that are the future of the region, as we have done for more than a decade. And also, I want to have a mayoralty that is based on delivery. Delivery is going to be based on delivery more than anything. Certainly not promises that can't be made, and it's not going to be based on some ideological pursuit of an end game that's not possible. And that's why you may know that I've taken away and removed a number of boards and discussion groups that had no effect or purpose or impact saving more than 9,000 hours of meeting time. Everything we do here must be about delivery, delivering for our people and improving people's lives. And that's my absolute focus. And that's why I'm here. And that's what I'm committed to doing over the next 4 years. So at this point, I think I'll hand back to the chair of the Over and Scrutiny panel, Councillor Huxley.
Thank you very much, Mayor. For those of you who've got an agenda in front of you, that was item 4. So I will go back to item 1 and welcome you all for this joint overview and scrutiny committee mayoral Q&A. Thank you all for attending. We have people online, councillors online as well. There's a few housekeeping issues. So the meeting is recorded and will be uploaded on YouTube later this afternoon. So we're all going to be YouTube stars. Please, could you use your microphones when speaking? Could you please turn off your mobile phones? As the Mayor has already indicated, there is a hard deadline of 1 p.m. Without any further, oh yes, and when asking questions and answering them, could you try and keep them concise, because there's a lot of questions we have to get through. I will chair the first session, so up to question 15. We will then have a quick coffee and comfort break, and for the second half, Councillor Burrow will do the chairing. So, and that's because the first bit is about transport, and the second is about housing and jobs and skills and economic growth, as the Mayor has set out in terms of his 4 priorities. So without any further ado, number 2, apologies for absence. Lindsay? Gemma?
Yes, Chair. So we have apologies from Councillor Gavin Lloyd from Coventry, Councillor Ian Matthews from Birmingham, Councillor Steve Hornley representing Staffordshire Non-Constituent Authority, Councillor Ian Nelly representing Shropshire Non-Constituent Authorities. We also have apologies from Councillor Daniel Millard and David Wilkes from Sandwell, but we've got Councillor Henry here as well.
Thank you, Gemma. And item 3 is declarations of interests. Does anyone have any interests that they need to declare which isn't on their register of members' interests? No. We are quorate, I believe.
Yeah.
So that's good. So then, without any further ado, we skip to agenda item 5, questions to the Mayor from members of the committee. And the first 2 are cross-cutting issues. And the first one is from Councillor Robert Alder, Birmingham City Council.
Thank you, Chair. Richard, good to see you. Can you just talk about how funded the manifesto pledges you made are, and over what time frame they're going to be delivered on?
Thank you, Robert. And apologies for running ahead to items 4. It's excitement only. But so no, a really good question. So I obviously got elected on the 2nd of May, and we had a full briefing on winning around the existing budgets of the combined authority and some of the challenges we face, including, as you will know, or members around the table will know, that the particular challenges around funding transport projects going forward. And you'll be aware that when I got elected, I inherited a financial gap in the business plans and finance plans of the CA of around 93 million next year, 25-26, and 143 million pounds in 29-30. So we've had to look at the impact of those on terms of delivering plans, and we're currently discussing the issues around medium to long-term financing with the government, and we'll hear more on the 30th of October. But I've been really clear from the outset about my priorities. That's including 20,000 new learning and training opportunities for young people across this region, and that's to address some of the issues I set out earlier about the challenges our young people face across this region. And I'm really pleased that 3 weeks ago, we had a meeting of business leaders in these premises around the table, and we've since had almost 5,000 commitments towards that 20,000 number target of training places. So we're making very good progress with that, and we'll be aligning some of our skills budgets to support those programmes as we are today. And you would have heard about my West Midlands Youth Plan and the funds we put together, particularly around the Path to Apprenticeship programme. And that Path to Apprenticeship programme, the funding there, around £7.5 million, will be used to support around 3,000 young people into training and placement opportunities. And I'm really pleased that the first cohort of young people on those programmes have had job interviews and have now got apprenticeships. So we're making some progress. We remain steadfast to that plan, and we are working with training providers and businesses in the region to deliver on that commitment. And going forward, I hope to have some more freedoms from the Secretary of State working with businesses to have more influence over shaping a skills system for post-16 education, where we need to make the biggest difference. On housing, I've been very clear about my targets and my plans going forward. My first act after the election of the new government was to write to the Secretary of State requesting the freedom to use around £125 million worth of resources, housing resources that are stranded in the accounts of the Combined Authority, and I can't currently use them because the rules around their use are drawn too tightly. Because the rules the previous government designed means that I can't really apply those resources at grant rates and intervention rates that make a difference to people's lives. We've had a very warm response from the Secretary of State to that correspondence, and I'm expecting shortly after the Charteris Chequers statement at the end of the month, we will have some clarity on what proportion of those funds I can use to particularly focus on the delivery of social housing. And you may well have seen a letter to the Secretary of State that she agreed we could publish, which set out our plans and priorities and the difference we can make. My predecessor delivered 46 units of social housing in 8 years. More freedom with the use of those budgets means we could deliver between 2,000 and 3,000 very, very quickly within the next 15 months. But we're waiting for some confirmation of the freedom I've got over the use of those funds. On growing the economy, absolutely fabric, as we all know, not only the government's primary mission, it has to be the primary mission of all of us, and myself leading this region, and we will continue to make it that mission. At the first board meeting I chaired, I got approval from the leaders, and I was very, very grateful for their support in approving the progress and the decision making over 3 investment zones across the region. One in Coventry, strengthening the border with Warwick and Warwickshire. One in the city centre here, and one in Wolverhampton, the Green Innovation Corridor. It is all about driving the economy forward. That programme of work will be fabric to growing our economy, as I said. That we are aiming to attract £5.5 billion worth of investment into the region on the back of those 3 investment zones and create 30,000 jobs. And it's very important that we continue with that work and that those jobs that we're creating go to people living, learning and training in this region. So we're making good progress. Once we've had an outcome or a statement from the Chancellor's Exchequer, we will recalibrate our plans alongside the funding we've got, but we're doing everything we can to attract the funding in this region that we need to make. And if we can do that, I think we've got a pathway to growth. We've got a pathway to investing in our young people, improving our productivity, and a pathway to attracting the investment we need and the investment infrastructure we need to help improve connectivity in this region and drive our economy forward. And that's the plan. Those are the conversations we're having in government. And hopefully at the next scrutiny board meeting we have, I can update you further on how the new funding settlement is going to be aligned with our plans for this region to drive growth and prosperity.
You have a supplementary, Councillor Alden.
Yeah, thank you. As it stands at the moment, what's the expected budget position for next year? And are you going to be introducing a mayoral precept?
Thank you. And I'll just go back to what I said initially about some of the challenges we face and which I inherited and have been in the public domain for some time around the figure of this gap in the Combined Authority's budget of 93 million for 2025-26 and 143 million for the 143 rising to 143 million by 29-30. So those issues are largely arise through funding issues in our transport system that has been underfunded for a long time. Both in terms of absolute numbers and comparators with other regions. It's also a consequence of the fact that leaders and councillors in this region have not increased the transport levy for a considerable period of time. So we have some issues about finding and funding those gaps in funding in our transport system, and they are at the heart of conversations with the Secretary of State and the Treasury at this point in time. We also need additional funding to keep the bus network going, and I've already emphasised the importance of those conversations. So those conversations are live and ongoing, and again, we'll have more detail about the government support for this region in terms of our priorities around transport, which are the biggest challenge facing us in terms of the funding gap. We'll have some more detail on that post the 30th of October. On the issue of the mayoral precepts, I've been really clear during my campaign and since that I've got no intention of raising a precept, and we only get there if we are, there is really nowhere else to go, and we're not in that position at the moment. But I think something which is really important to understand about the precept is that I can only raise a precept for functions that are defined as mayoral functions, and that has been agreed and approved through a statutory instrument. Transport, as defined in that statutory instrument, is not a mayoral function. So the biggest challenge we face around funding is around transport, and a mayoral precept, if I levied one, wouldn't be able to address those issues in any case. So at this point in time, given the lead times for levying a precept, given the legal and regulatory constraints about its use, I am able to say, I think pretty clearly, that there won't be a precept in 25-26. The position will be reviewed because we all need to take our responsibilities as leaders to ensure that this this region is viable. But at this point in time, I'll clarify and repeat what I've said before. I have no intention of raising a precept, and we will seek to explore every other avenue to fill the funding gaps we have for this region, particularly around transport, and that will remain the case.
Thank you.
Thank you. Question 2, Councillor John McNicholas, Country City Council.
Thank you, Chair. Welcome, Richard. Your introduction was very interesting in terms of jobs, homes, growth, transport, and your point about the precepts and reminding us that transport, the biggest spender, would not be part of that precept anyway, so will not resolve the many problems that we face with transport. Can you provide some detail as to how the reality of budget pressures have impacted on your manifesto commitments?
Thank you, John. So I'm pleased to say that at this stage, not a great deal, and that's largely because I'm working within financial envelopes that were particularly around skills and housing that were known of already. There are also some positive news under this too, particularly around the flexibility we have potentially around future housing resources, which are very, very important. And I've had some positive conversations with the Secretary of State and the team about the way we might use those going forward. We are not fantastic well resourced on skills, and I wish I had more resources to tackle post-16 issues, but we are using the funds we have for adult education in a really effective way. They're not the sums of money that allow us to address the problems we've got in their fullest. And that's helpful. And also in terms of bus franchising, irrespective of the numbers that were thrown around previously by my predecessor, the cost of bus franchising is likely to be around 22.5 million, not 180 million. And given that we're spending £50 million almost every year to subsidise the existing network, those sums of money are well manageable and can be delivered. So within the broader context, nothing to date has caused me to deviate from the plans that I've got or the commitments. But going forward, most importantly, the plans and what we can do from next spring onwards will be defined by, and the envelope around that is going to be set by the budget on the 30th of October, Councillor Nicholas. And at the moment, we are, as every other mayor is and every other combined authority is, in detailed discussions and conversations with members of the government and senior civil servants about that settlement. We know it's going to be tough. My responsibility is to ensure we get the best settlement for this region, but it's also about how we set a plan and build confidence nationally with our capability in this region and in this place to do things differently. And that's why, I've launched an independent review of transport spending and budgets, and there may be other areas of spending that are subject to similar reviews going forward, because there are two things that are really important, or actually three things. Firstly, we need to be able to demonstrate to ourselves and the national government that we've got the capability and the competence here to manage and implement complex projects on time and to budget. And frankly, that hasn't always been the case in the past. But we also need, and I need the confidence, if you like, that going forward, as we make announcements and align spending plans to policy priorities, that the money we've got available is sufficient to meet my objectives, and indeed that we can manage and deliver those programmes to budget and on time going forward. So in summary, at the moment, we've been really clear about my priorities. I remain steadfast into my commitment to those. Every conversation we're having with government is about aligning future spending allocations from government with the priorities that I've got. And to date, those conversations have been positive, albeit in the context of obviously the government is going to have to make some very difficult decisions around its future priorities. One thing I would say, just to add to this, is that I am more optimistic around some large capital funding. At last, we have a government that recognises that when you invest in technology, in infrastructure and in people, that is not a cost to the country. It's an investment that will drive growth and prosperity. And just imagine if the Victorians hadn't built the railways in this country, or we hadn't built the motorways in the 60s and 70s, what sort of economy and connectivity we would have around this country. So I'm hoping for some very positive news about investing in the infrastructure that will help us take our economy forward. But at the moment, we are waiting for the Chancellor's statement on the 30th before we make definite plans for the next 3 to 4 years.
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor?
No, I was tempted, but no.
Okay. Thank you. Right, then going on to the next section, journeys for everyone, transport. First question is from Councillor Liz Clements, who's joining us online. Councillor Clements.
Yeah, good morning, Chair, and good morning, Mayor, and hello, everybody. It's been really good to hear Richard talk already extensively about his the centrality of transport in his priorities and his agenda in the future, and he's already alluded to that, to the financial challenges. But I think on the transport overview delivery and scrutiny committee, we're all concerned about whether the capital programme is actually going to be the funding for it is going to be adequate to deliver the ambitions in the local transport plan and to fully integrate transport. I've been really pleased to hear you obviously on the revenue side to talk about the transport levy, but on the capital side, are we going to have to rein in our ambitions for transport?
Thank you, Liz, and thank you for all the work you're doing campaigning as you do really effectively for transport connectivity and using transport to address some of the issues we face around getting to net zero. The issues around the capital spending for transport are very critical to this region. We know how important that investment is to our economy and our connectivity, and also when I arrived to a position whereby we had some profound spending issues around some of the commitments we've made. So at a national level, we are lobbying government to ensure we get the transport settlement that we need. And the Secretary of State and the Chancellor Exchequer have been reviewing regional programmes and priorities. And I'm hopeful that we will get the resources we need going forward to invest in the infrastructure, or the transport infrastructure, that will help address some of the issues you refer to. We are, albeit, waiting for those outcomes. I have been, as you will be aware, campaigning with the Mayor of Greater Manchester on future investment in a railway line, a new line that will connect HS2 with Greater Manchester, and I'm hoping we'll hear some more about that too. we have to continue, all of us, to campaign to get the transport settlement we need for this region. But the other side of my brief is equally important, and that's ensuring that when we deploy resources in this region, we deploy them on the projects that make the biggest difference, and we manage and deliver those projects on time and to budget. And to be frank, and you'll know this more than I do, that has not been the case in the past. Too many projects have been overspent, and too many projects have taken too long to deliver. So that's why, in terms of taking our own responsibility in this region, in terms of what we can deliver with the resources we've got to get our own house in order too. And that was pretty clear from discussions I had with the Secretary of State soon after the new government was elected. The independent transport review being carried out by Arup will help me understand, and all of us understand, because a report will be published about the way we've prioritised, managed and delivered projects to date, and what we need to improve delivery going forward. If we do that, we can make sure we spend every £1,000 of money we've got for transport projects in the best possible way. And I need to demonstrate to the Secretary of State we can do that if we're going to have more devolved responsibilities over our priority projects. That's the plan going forward. I'm hoping they should be shortly after the Chancellor's statement at the end of October. We'll have more clarity on the resources we've got available to us in this region, and then we're going to align that work with the second phase of the transport review, which we're working with technical experts and leaders across this region to start to frame our transport plans for the future. And they will be ambitious, but to be really, really clear, I want them based on a recognition and the practicalities of delivery. So we'll be working with a transport plan that is framed around the resources that we've got, not around a vision that is aligned to hopes and expectations of money that is likely never to be there.
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Clements?
It's more of a comment rather than a supplementary, Chair, if I may. I mean, I think we're all aware of the transformational impact of Sprint, bus rapid transit and metro, and I think as a Birmingham councillor I want reassurances that we're going to complete the east side route of the tram, of the metro, and also I want us to not step back from our emissions around bus rapid transit. I saw at the weekend that Indianapolis in the United States has just opened another new fantastic bus rapid transit line, and I think on Sprint, we've already got the evidence, that the savings in journey times and the reductions in congestions, and those projects thus far have been delivered on time, within budget and within budget. We know about the problems with metro. We know how immensely costly and slow it is. So in the same way that the government is looking at construction costs for HS2, are we going to look at the cost for delivering metro? But I think all of us on the Transport Committee would like the reassurance that the existing plans are going to be delivered both in Birmingham and in the Black Country. And is there anything you can say to us about that, Richard?
And before the Mayor answers, just let me add, the previous Mayor had 6 Sprint priority routes, and then the Metro was going to East Birmingham and North Solihull, and to link up with the proposed high-speed 2 station at Birmingham Interchange. And of course, thinking about the region as a whole, looking at Wednesbury all the way through to Briley Hill, and then looking at what should be done in terms of that missing link between Briley Hill and Starbridge. So just to add to that, and to answer your question, please, now.
Thank you, Councillor Clement, Councillor Huxtable. So let's be really clear. We can have plans and visions for this place, but if the funding isn't there, those plans and visions amount to zero. And my predecessor made announcements and commitments and statements about projects for which there was no funding, and there was no commitment from central government, and even worse, in some cases there were suggestions or announcements about projects when those projects hadn't even got to a business case or a strategic business case. We are now in a very different environment. We've got a Labour government and Labour mayor working together in harness around a delivery plan that in every instance has to be backed by resources. We will have a vision for this region about what we want to do, but we have to focus on projects that are deliverable, where we've got the funding in place and we cannot be distracted from delivering those. In the past, we've let our ambitions run ahead of priorities and delivery. We've had too many projects that have taken too long to deliver. We have had profound delays. I arrived in office to face a briefing, and as I said at my last CA board meeting, today was a day of reckoning, and it was that day. It should not have taken the election of a new mayor, or indeed a mayor election, for what I had to say that day to be in the public domain. I arrived in a position where a whole series of transport projects, and this information, the independent reviewers will analyse in terms of how long it was known. I had to make announcements about severe delays to projects and the overrunning of budgets on arrival, and it should not have been left to a new mayor to have said that if that was known in advance. We cannot continue to run a transport programme and make commitments when money is not there, or we're overspending so massively we've got to, at very late moments, change our plans. That's why I asked for the independent review. I've got no less sense of ambition about the future of this region's transport projects, but to be absolutely clear, our delivery must be based on a priority set of projects where money has been secured and we've got clear delivery plans, and that has not been the case in the past, whatever you think or whatever has been announced previously.
Clements, your relationship with Westminster.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I mean, I think what Richard just said there is crucial, isn't it? That we've got to have projects that are fully costed and deliverable, and to that, that's how we sort of move on to the next question that I was going to ask. Richard's already answered it to a certain extent, but how are you making our case in Westminster, that the West Midlands Combined Authority area needs this vital transport infrastructure investment, and how are you making the links, to the government's particular focus on inclusive economic growth?
Yes, thank you. It's one of my primary responsibilities is to advocate for this region, build a case for investment here, and indeed build a case for this place with Westminster and Whitehall. So just 2 Fridays ago, I attended the inaugural meeting of the Council of Nations and Regions with the Prime Minister, all mayors and the leaders of our 3 devolved nations. That provided me with an opportunity, as did everyone else present, to present the case and advocate for this region and around the priorities that I've discussed already around growth, transport, housing and skills. It was also a very useful meeting to discuss and share with other mayors and regional leaders about their priorities, and it won't surprise you that there's a very significant amount of alignment. We've also had a series of visits since I've been elected by members of the government. Georgia Gould, who is the Cabinet Minister for Public Service Reform, Lillian Greenwood, the Roads Minister, and indeed Liz Kendall, the Work and Pension Secretary, we visited too. We've been using those moments in meetings to promote this case. And earlier this time last week, I attended the government's International Investment Summit, talking to members of the government and future investors in infrastructure and in businesses and in jobs and skills here with senior leaders globally who attended that event. So we are doing as much as we can to promote this region and build a case for investment. And I've also had over the last week productive discussions with the local government minister, because I know that local government financing matters too. It is about us working together. I've spoken to the Secretary of State's team, the Secretary of State for Transport, and indeed with the Chancellor of Duchy of Lancaster, Pat McFadden, on the importance of funding our transport infrastructure in this region. So we'll continue to take the case for Westminster and Whitehall. We're continuing to engage with the private sector about the investment we need, and I'm continuing to work on the ground every day of the week with investors in this region that need issues on projects resolved or progressed in order to ensure they continue to deliver here. So that's what we're doing as much as we can. The results of those discussions, I think, will become clearer post the 30th of October. But I would also say to everyone around this room, if there's more you think I should be doing, or as a group of leaders we should be doing, please let us know. It's a very important part of the role. I know that I want a relationship with Westminster and Whitehall that is less transactional going forward, but the lobbying and the advocacy is absolutely, it takes absolute primacy at this point in time.
Any supplementary there, Councillor Clements?
Thanks, Chair. Just a quick follow-up question to Richard. What do you need from the region's MPs in terms of making this case, for investment in the West Midlands Combined Authority area? And also, what do you think they need from us in terms of the clarity, and the power of the message?
So I think it's incumbent on all of us to communicate to our MPs and other representatives on this issue. I have written with on behalf of the Combined Authority and a number of the council leaders across the region around funding issues to relevant members of the government. That will continue. I'm also having private conversations behind the scenes on some of the more sensitive issues, and that's the way I want to run my relationship with Westminster particularly. I think it's the best way to build trust and understanding, and I'll continue to work in that way. But I'll be very receptive to any issues or points, additional points you want me to flag with them. Everything we're doing currently is based on plans and priorities I've spoken about already. But if you have local MPs, Councillor Clements or others that you want to raise issues with about the importance of this, please do. I am having closer conversations with members of Parliament in this region that are in the government at this stage, and I think the privacy of those and the confidentiality of those meetings is really, really important at this stage. But if there are issues that you want me to raise more publicly or indeed privately, I'm very happy to receive them, after this meeting.
We now come to my question, and you've already touched upon it already about the high speed to North Western leg, and I think also we've been overtaken by events over the weekend with the government announcing that they're not going to focus on the North Western leg in their press release, their DfT press release yesterday. So from your perspective, Mayor, where are we with the Arup report? You mentioned that already, that they undertook, which was commissioned by the previous Mayor of the West Midlands and the current Mayor of Greater Manchester.
Thank you, Councillor Huxtable. So we've moved on considerably since the point in time you referenced when my predecessor and the Mayor of Greater Manchester worked together. So soon after my election, Arup came to me with an update on the work they've been doing, and I suggested they rescope it for three reasons. Firstly, there was at that point in time, we weren't aware that the general election would be so soon, but we were expecting, and this is a point in early May, that there will be a general election within the next 3 or 4 months. And I was really clear with them that that they should wait to issue their report until there was a new government. And I gave them my views on the scope of work that they've been previously advised to carry out. And I was very critical of the previous piece of work in two regards, but primarily it was around the idea that the private sector would invest in a railway line, buy land, put spades in the ground, and take all the risk of building a line without that line or that project being underwritten by government. And of course, at that time, the previous government had pulled the rug under that project completely. The reality, of course, is that there's not one funder or banker or insurer that would invest a penny in a railway line unless the government at the time was underwriting it or committed to it. It would be the biggest, white elephant anyway. So I was really clear to Arup that any proposition going forward needed to recognise not that the private sector could develop it and build it. The private sector's building the current line. We all know that. But any future report needed to recognise that it needs to be underwritten or supported by the government of the day. Otherwise, nothing would happen. I'm really pleased they recognised that recommendation. I also suggested that further connectivity didn't need to be at high speed. we live in a small country. It was more about reliability and reducing capacity, the capacity constraints on the M6 toll, the M6, sorry, and the West Coast Main Line. And I also suggested that rather than give the government an ultimatum about this project, they should look at ways of bringing the government into the fold in the tent and supporting the project. So I was very, very pleased when Arup issued its report, and it recognised those comments and my input, and it's produced a report that I think is practical in its solution, far more pragmatic in its approach, an approach that will reduce the costs by almost to half and still deliver 80% of the benefits. And more practically, it recognises the role in government supporting any project like that. And thirdly, it suggests that the next step forward should be the creation of a steering group on which myself and the Mayor of Greater Manchester would sit alongside the Secretary of State and other council leaders impacted by the route through Staffordshire and Cheshire, most notably. So I think the report is it's progressive, it's pragmatic, it's far more practical. That's why it has my support. And the conversations I've had with the Secretary of State and advisors in government are that they believe the same about that report. And I'm hoping that subsequent to the Chancellor's statement at the end of this month, we will, the government will set up the first steering group or steering committee, which will be the first step to moving this project forward. There is still an enormous amount of work to be done in terms of feasibility and technical analysis, because largely to date the work has been a desktop piece of work. And but I'm hopeful and optimistic that it will get very serious consideration from the government, and the next stage of work in progressing the project around the creation of the steering group and further technical feasibility work will be carried out in the very near future.
Thank you. I think Councillor Zakta has a comment to that.
Yeah. Richard, sir, thank you very much. Sir, I'm very impressed and I'm grateful of your honesty and decisiveness, what you said. And so my plea to you is, will this kind of honesty will travel down to our bureaucrats or trickles down to bureaucrats, that they can be honest and precise when we are asking questions. I've been on this TDC and TDOS since 2015, and I'm involved in most of the projects, and I am so impressed. I have, and many of my colleagues, been asking questions, and I'm afraid today is very clear coming from a very person who's elected mayor of us, our region, telling us that we haven't got the fundings to deliver all those projects, and whereas hundreds of hours were spent by officers telling us and getting those business cases to the table. So also I would ask you to take that message to the government, because in our country, there is a terrible deficit of trust towards politicians, and our country is in a ruin. Our economy is in ruin. Our region here, if you see, when it comes to employment, you will see compared to national average, it's below. Skills, below. When it comes to education, also we are underachieving. And we need honest politicians to tell the government and tell the public how things are. Take HS2, millions and millions of pounds being spent, and no one is being held responsible and is cancelled. One major project, and our bureaucrats, our politicians fail to deliver it. My question to you is, it's all right to talk about HS2. What about Avanti? What are you going to do about that? What are you going to do about West Midland trains? So many cancellations. And as you pointed out to us, far as transport is concerned, is crucial to our communities, crucial to our businesses. it is an integral part to successful economy. So what you going to do about it?
Thank you very much for those points. So on the first issues you've raised, all of us want to do the very best for this region. And we need, and all of us need, an understanding of projects that are priorities, why there are priorities, and to have the confidence and the assurance that we've got the funding there to deliver them. That's all I want. I want the same thing as you. I want clear timetables for delivery, absolute transparency with people around this room and with the people across this region, so I can be held properly accountable. And we're being totally honest with people about what they can expect, when and where. And when that doesn't happen, trust breaks down and faith in democracy breaks down and faith in political governments evaporates. And that's where I don't want to be. And if we are there, we're letting the people of this region down. So that has to be the priority going forward around projects and priorities. Some people in this room may disagree with some of those priorities. They may think they should be their pet project or another project. We make those decisions as a board at the CA level with all the leaders around those priorities, and that political alliance and alignment is really, really important. But once we've got those priorities, we have an absolute responsibility to ensuring they're delivered within budget and on time. And that's not been the case regionally. And to be frank, it's not been the case nationally too. So I think that's really, really important. In terms of other railway lines and systems and connections through the region, then I've met with the MDs of Avanti and West Midlands Railways and others, and I've stressed my concern about their punctuality, their performance, and the regularity of those services. Sadly, given the regulatory issues that I face, my ability to intervene and make a big difference to those currently is limited, but we've signalled our concerns to the Department for Transport and our expectations around future performance. The hope that we have and the way the government is going to take these issues forward to help us secure the services we need and the reliability that our people expect is around the government's plans to bring the railway system back within an integrated system under public control through the creation of a Great British Railways. And that is all our effort is going into shaping that system. So we have an integrated transport system that meets the needs of this region. And I'm really pleased that the Chief Executive here, the Combined Authority, Laura Schoaf, has been requested to sit as chair of the Shadow Board of Great British Railways, and the Secretary of State consulted me on that, and I was very keen to approve it. And that means, as a region, we have a very important leader sitting and chairing the board of that institution, and I expect Laura to use that role to help shape a railway system, railway network that works not just for the country, but for this region too.
Okay, conscious that there's a lot of questions still to get through, we're moving on to bus franchising and Councillor Clements.
Thanks very much, Chair. And I just in response to something that Purvis has said, I think there's a danger of getting into a chorus of total negativity, because I think we need to go forward and make our case to the government with confidence about the things that we've done well. On Saturday morning, I had an excellent integrated journey where I arrived on a train to New Street, got straight on the tram. And that should be the norm across the region. We can deliver those schemes. We've delivered a really effective bus rapid transit. We just need more of it. On bus
you sound surprised. Yeah.
Well, it is sometimes it is surprising, given that given the slightly checkered past of the metro, and I want to have that experience, and I had a brilliant experience on Saturday. I'm a geek. I love travelling. I'm on the tram, and it's brilliant when it works. Just on the bus franchising, Mayor, I like you. I'm excited by the potential, the legislation that the government is putting through to put both bus and rail back into public hands. But I'm a bit concerned about the time scale for bus franchising under the current legislation. So do you see potential in the better bus legislation for us to speed up bus franchising, and what's the potential to move to actually a municipal bus company, which is actually owned and operated by West Midlands Combined Authority?
Thank you, Liz, and thanks for all the campaigning you've been doing for years around an alternate approach to operating the buses. Our approach to bus franchising, to be clear to everyone, is not ideological. It's about how we improve a bus network and a bus system here that benefits everyone. As I may have said previously, 80% of the users of public transport in this region use the buses, and the buses aren't getting people to work, to college, to high streets or to hospitals currently. And indeed, my thinking around franchising was developing over the last couple of years. If the case for it was set out very clearly, actually, during a meeting I had with the Solihull Chamber of Commerce, who, when I asked them what difference I could do to help businesses in Solihull make a difference and get access to the staff they need, their response was sort out the buses. And there are currently jobs in Solihull Town Centre, at the airport, or at JLR, that young people from Chelmsford Wood, Smithwood and Kingshurst in the North Solihull cannot get to because the bus timetable doesn't align to or address issues around shift patterns. We've got a public transport system that isn't meeting needs of the public and giving young people particularly the opportunities that will change their lives. We are letting them down, and we're letting people in this region down. In terms of the franchising process, I was really pleased at the last board meeting. All the council leaders approved, that we go to the first stage of a process. And the process, I admit, Liz, is rather ornate and complicated. And that's because the previous government, of course, didn't want bus franchising to be a possibility and created hurdles to stop it. But we've got to the first stage and we have to follow due process. You referred to legislation around future bus legislation. I think sadly it's likely that our processes won't be able to be aligned with any new legislation. So we're currently working on the basis that we have to follow the existing legislation, albeit once we're in a clearer position, we'll look to see what we can do to shorten processes. I spoke to Andy Burnham, Mayor Greater Manchester, who's been through this. He's going to be coming down to speak to leaders and myself, if not later this year, early next year, if we make progress on our franchising proposition, to speak to leaders and indeed some of the civil servants here about what work can be done to streamline the processes that he had to go through. And he was of the view, like you, Liz, it took far too long. But we have to currently work alongside the existing requirements, regulatory requirements. And in terms of the way forward, and like you, I would like to be able to streamline the process if the appropriate hurdles are met. At this stage, that currently isn't possible, so we have to work within the rules that they're designed. And in terms of the next key phases, at the board meeting on the 13th of December, we should receive the outcome of the audit report. This is auditing the routes and the bus patterns and our understanding of data supporting the current system. And at that stage, leaders will be given the opportunity to decide whether to progress to the next stage of consultation. If they do, the consultation process runs from the 6th of January for 12 weeks, where all other key partners and stakeholders and residents will be able to contribute and comment on the type of bus network and system they'd like in the future. And if we follow due process, and I'm expecting that we will have to, the current due process, we get to a point in May where we receive the results of that consultation. And at this stage, a formal decision to proceed will take place. And from that point in time, it could take a further 2 years before we start to implement the first franchised route or routes in the region. It will be a longer time frame for implementation frame than I would like, given the current issues we face. But sadly, we have to work within the current regulatory constraints. But what I will do, Liz, is, and to everyone in this room, if we meet the appropriate hurdles in this region and we get the support in this region from leaders to proceed, we will look at streamlining processes by working with government to ensure that we meet any regulatory hurdles as quickly as possible and we streamline and reduce the costs of implementation as much as we can.
That's a comprehensive answer. So I'm going to move on and give another councillor on TDOS the opportunity to speak, and that's so we're skipping to question 8 and active travel. And I know that a few councillors want to say a few things on this, but Councillor Carol Hyatt to ask her question first.
Thank you very much, Chair. Mayor, what is your position on active travel and your understanding of the key role of the West Midlands Combined Authority in this mode of travel?
And could you include in your answer Councillor Clements a question about the active travel and cycling commissioner, please, now?
I will do. Thank you, Councillor Hyatt. Thank you, Councillor Huxtable. I think I want, and we all want, the West Midlands to be a place where it's as safe as possible to be a pedestrian and to cycle around this region. And we want to encourage more people across this region to participate in active travel, and including what we can do to improve accessibility and make our pavements and our streets safer. We know how important it is that pedestrians in particularly and cyclists get more prioritisation at junctions and across our road network. We currently have an active travel budget in the for the Combined Authority that we allocate and support councils with. And the latest figures I have is that there's around £60 million for capital projects and £11 million for revenue projects. Currently, the approach to framing those interventions and those support of those projects has been currently set, and the Combined Authority is working with councils to ensure there's maximum take-up of those resources. Now, there is further work to do because it's apparent to me, not just across active travel budgets, but some other budgets, that some of the processes that have been designed into the system to support business cases and get their approval, and we have to work within government guidelines for this, take too long. So I have asked civil servants to look at what we can do to streamline processes for applications for funds and their approval, and I hope that that will make a big difference. But in terms of the work on the ground that we're doing, there is a cycling and walking programme that facilitates active travel across the region. There's a very effective behavioural hub that actually engages communities and schools that encourages active travel and is supporting those programmes. And there's other engagement with community groups and other cycling and pedestrian groups that is looking to maximise take-up. But there is the key aspect of making more progress on this is improving the relationship between decision makers here in councils and looking at ways we can work with each other to actually streamline the processes so we can implement projects a lot more quickly. And that always hasn't been happening to date.
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Hyde?
Yes, it's just great to hear that you're going to streamline the process. I'd like to ask a question about what happens to the interest that the Combined Authority gains because of the delay that has happened in projects. When you have an active travel project, the cost of that project, when it's delayed, will inevitably go up. The amount that you can spend that money on goes down. What happens to the interest which the Combined Authority keeps because they're not spending that money quick enough?
But the only benefit of delay, is that the money does accrue in the account, and my understanding is that interest that is accrued is then used to support other transport projects in the region, and decisions over the priorities are made by council leaders and the board. So that money is then reinvested in other projects and other priorities, and that's the same across any policy programme where there is a surplus of funds sitting on the balance sheet. I did want to come back to Councillor Huxtable's other question, which was around active travel commissioner. So we've considered this role very, very closely because of its importance, and also you will be aware of some of the awful and tragic events and accidents that have taken place on the streets around the West Midlands, and particularly in this city. And we've consulted with other key stakeholders across the region around the role and its scope and how we can give the role some real purpose and meaning, but also how the role fits into decision making and governance across the region in a way it hadn't done previously. So we are now finalising the terms of reference for the scope of that work, and I'm told that we'll be recruiting for that role within the next 2 weeks. The role will attract a small honorarium, not a salary, and the person taking up that role will have direct accountability to the new task force on transport that we're setting up, and that will ensure that whilst that role can operate quasi-independently, he will, or they will, whoever it is, will report into a task force, and that task force will report into the main board. So we're looking to have create a role that has real impact on decision making and policy, and the way that person will undertake that role by reporting through to one of the key task force, we think is the best way of ensuring that the case and that happens. And we expect, if you're interested, that the first task force meetings will take place early next year, and I would expect the Active Travel and Cycling Commissioner to be at that first task force meeting.
I'm going to call Councillor Ellen Fenton in terms of working with agencies in terms of active travel.
Thank you, Chair. You touched on working with stakeholders, but there were more internal stakeholders and other authorities that hold the responsibilities. This question is more into relation to the stakeholders that exist external to authorities, and what the combined authority has been doing to promote their interest in active travel, both in terms of using it, but also in terms of investment into it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Fenton. So the team, I think, that drives that engagement beyond, local authorities, and the team that is having the biggest impact and probably the most important role out there. And again, it's one of those areas where I would welcome feedback from those in the room and others about whether or not this is the best way for this organisation to engage. But the way that is currently led, that wider engagement is currently through a behavioural team that collaborates with schools, with communities, with other campaign groups to ensure that we promote active travel. And I've got a list of other organisations here. Dr. Bikes on inclusive cycle training, we provide active travel grants, and we're supporting funding to support organising led walks, and we're subsidising West Midlands cycle and e-scooter hires. In terms of the investment we've made, I've referred to previously, there's around £60 million of the capital and £11 million worth of revenue. We can provide details on those particular schemes and projects, I think, subsequent to this meeting. I've not got them at hand, but since I understand that since the scheme, the behavioural team started to set up and engage, they've engaged with 129 schools across the West Midlands. 129 schools are taking part this year. And since April this year, there have been over 12,500 participants across the region in active travel projects. But in terms of specific schemes, interventions, I think we can get those shared with you after this meeting.
Chair.
Yes, Councillor Clements.
So it was just a quick follow-up to what Richard has or the Mayor has just shared with us about the process for appointing a new walking and cycling commissioner. I would like to request that the transport TDOS gets sight of the job description and person specification for this role, because I can just say, in my experience, as the former cabinet member for transport, that our previous commissioner, played a really crucial role in liaising between the CA and councils, particularly at points where councils were doing things that would actually be barriers to cycling. And I've got in Birmingham a live situation where a proposal has come forward from the council, which would have benefited from some challenge and scrutiny from a commissioner if he or she were in place at the moment. So I think in terms of our role as scrutiny councillors and pre-decisions councillors, it would be good if TDOS or the member engagement group, which Councillor Hyatt chairs, had sight of that role description before it's finalised, please.
that is noted, but I'm not going to call in the mayor to answer.
Okay,
And I'm going to move on to question 10, which is about speed cameras and road safety, as we're there with Councillor Diane Donaldson. And again, if you could incorporate in your response answer to the Road Safety Commissioner appointment as well, Mayor. But Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mayor. As you're aware, only too aware of the loss of lives on the roads, not only in Birmingham, but across the region. Active speed cameras have played a vital part in reducing speeds on the road, thus preventing deaths. What is the process for determining the sighting of speed cameras across the region?
Thank you, Councillor Donaldson, on an incredibly important issue. And as we know, there have been too many people and too many young people that have died tragically on our roads and our road network across the West Midlands, and that's been the case for too long. So it's one of those areas where, in terms of my powers, they are limited and constrained. They're concurrent with local authorities on the key route network, and that means that decisions need to be made collaboratively. But the final decision on speed cameras and control cameras and other equipment that is put in place to fulfil those purposes are taken largely by the local authority working with the police. And we have set up a Gold Command to look at ways we can address some of those issues. And indeed, I was with the PCC and the Chief Constable last week talking about some of the work that they're doing to making this a bigger priority. And we have also some constraints, as you know, about the way in which any of the revenues generated from speed cameras go back currently to Her Majesty's government. So, but we are working really closely with the police constable and the PCC, and in this city with the leader of the council. And already some cameras have been put in place at particular hotspots of accidents to try to improve behaviours and pursue people that are driving illegally or dangerously on our roads. The PCC, who are meeting later today, and myself are working with the Home Office, and we are looking, if we proceed, to unlock a pilot project that will allow us to retain some of the speeding fines in this region. And we are looking to use that pilot project to create the case for a different approach to funding speed cameras and their surveillance and the penalty system that follows. And that's really important because I think for too long now, we've looked simply at the issue of road safety and speed cameras enforcement as just a financial issue. Who bears the costs and where the benefit's going to in financial terms? Part of this work around the pilot and the trial is going to look more expansively at the wider social costs and benefits of the impact of deaths on our road and people getting injured, and the way in which not only those that lose their lives and the impact on their families, but the wider impact. If we do that, I'm in no doubt that the case for retaining the revenues, and not just bearing the costs of speed cameras, will be a very, very clear one for the Treasury. But I'm working with the PCC and the Chief Constable in the West Midlands to look at ways we can build a case for that and run a pilot. And if we can do that, I'm hopeful that the case for having a very different approach will succeed. In terms of the second question, which was raised around Road Safety Commissioner, I am acutely aware of the delay into this post, but it's really important we get the role and the person right. And it comes back to what I've just said about working collaboratively with other political leaders in the region. If we're going to do this, given my responsibilities are quite constrained. So currently, the role profile that we're looking to take out there for recruitment is with the Police and Crime Commissioner, and it's on the agenda for the meeting I've got with him later today. And I'm hoping soon we'll be in a position to recruit into a role that is jointly, and quite rightly, jointly supported by both the Mayor and the Police and Crime Commissioner.
Chair. Very quickly, Councillor.
Yeah, just quick question on average speed camera. Richard, as you know, in Coventry, we are very advanced putting speed cameras. We got it on almost main arteries. So, but we haven't received any funding from Combined Authority, and there is no funding from Combined Authority. Is that right?
That is the case currently.
Thank you, sir.
Right, okay, I'm going to try and call in councillors who have not spoken already. So I'm going to skip to question 12, and that's the Metro Councillor Ian Head.
Richard, much of what I'm going to say now has already been raised by other councillors concerning the Metro. The delivery of the Metro extension in the region has been beset by ever increasing costs and challenges of the funding of these schemes. What is your vision for the Metro network during your four-year term? That's my question.
And I'll try not to repeat what I've said before, but no, it's a very valid point. There's no doubt that metro systems can play a fantastic important role in connecting communities, improving our economy, reducing congestion on our roads, and improving people's lives and helping them get around the region the way they can't today. But it has been incredibly slow progress. I think since it was created, we've only developed, and this is almost 25 years ago, 14 miles of track, which equates to about half a mile a year, which is, it's very slow progress. Indeed, the average person in that time would have walked between the North Pole and the South Pole once, and we got halfway back. So we know how slow the progress has been made. All I can do is continue to support projects that have been planned and agreed by the members of the Combined Authority previously. But what we have to do is look at every business case to make sure the business case stacks up. Without a business case stacking up, we can't get the funding, and then we have to request additional funding from government, because without capital funding, we can't secure that investment. So I'll continue to be an advocate for Metro, but I'm also keen to look at ways in which we can improve our connectivity more quickly and in a more affordable way in the short to medium term. That's why bus franchising is a priority. And that's also why I think it's duty on all of us to look at other rapid transport systems, including the VLR being developed in the great city of Coventry, to look at other modes of transport that can help improve our connectivity more cost effectively. And that's what we'll continue to do. And we will look at all the options for delivering that. But we have to deliver. My priority in the next 4 years is delivering for the people of this region, delivering on projects on time, on budget, and just ensuring that when we spend our transport funds particularly, we're always securing the best possible outcome for the people of this region.
Supplementary, Councillor Kettle.
Well, I'm saying, Mr. Mayor, let's hope the 1.4 billion that was on deposit a few weeks ago is put to good use. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I think that's a comment. I think that's a comment more than a question. So I'm in the vein of asking councillors who haven't commented before. Question 14, the impact of changing habits, and councillor.
Thanks. With the closure of department stores and the increasing number of people working from home, how do you intend to manage the decline of the importance of town and city centres and the reducing demand on public transport?
Thank you. And an incredibly important question. Certainly, when I was campaigning, I'll be really clear, 3 issues that were at the top of people's lists when we spoke to them were not, well, beyond the cost of living crisis and the crisis in the health service, were the decline of high streets, because the high streets are the visible sign for people in this region that the places they live in are being overlooked and left behind. And that's why I've made one of my aims and ambitions is to work with key stakeholders to what we can do to bring our high streets back to life by looking at new uses, whether that's residential or businesses. And I've been encouraging and will continue to encourage the fantastic business improvement districts we've got across this region to share their best practice with other high streets. Key to the success of our high streets is footfall, and that's been declining as our town centres have been hollowed out and people have started to work at home more. But let's also be clear that part of the issue we have is that many of our high streets are not well serviced by public transport. And that's why the reforms I want to make to the public transport system are also about encouraging not just a nighttime economy, but access and accessibility to high streets. One of the early projects that came across my desk, which is a great example of this, is actually Sutton Coldfield Town Centre, where there was a project to remove your bus access or the bus station from the town centre to another location, and it was a new owner of the shopping centre at Sutton Coldfield that demanded that didn't happen, because they quite rightly understood that if you disconnect the bus service and the bus terminus from the town centre, the likelihood is that that you will degrade the prospects of the town centre and footfall. So I understand how inextricably linked the two are. We've got to build a new future for our high streets. We've got to look at ways of attracting more footfall. And I would see the recalibration, a new approach to public service transport, and particularly bus franchising, as a way to not just improve patronage on the bus service, but also to improve the patronage of our great high streets and town centres too.
Do you have a follow-up, Councillor Kane?
Thank you, Chair. Just a short one. I'm old enough to remember the decline of British Rail under the Harold Wilson and James Callaghan Labour governments of the 60s and 70s. Timetables were a work of fiction, and services were constantly interrupted by strike action caused by trade unions with excessive bargaining power. Does the Mayor agree with me that those who advocate franchising and nationalisation should look at the lessons of the past and ask themselves how things will be different this time around?
Councillor, I think we've asked ourselves those questions and realised that the performance we've seen on our bus network and our railways for the last 15 years has let people of this region down. So we need to look at other solutions, and we're going to have new solutions that allow us to integrate our transport system, so the transport system of the future works for the future of people in this region.
You mentioned the nighttime economy, so that is apposite in terms of question 13 and Councillor Roberts Alden about nighttime transport. Councillor Alden.
Thank you. Obviously, nighttime safety is vital across our region for people to be able to feel they can go around socialising, enjoying the leisure facilities in the region. So can you just tell us what your plans are for nighttime transport and improving the access to it?
Thank you, Councillor Alden. We want people in this region to enjoy every aspect of this region, including, you know, its cultural, its and its nightlife, and theatres and cinemas and everything else that goes with it. And I'm acutely aware that the transport system doesn't always allow that, and indeed it sometimes impedes those sectors and those businesses and limits opportunity. So I was really clear from the outset that I want to ensure that all users on our public transport system feel safe, whether that's women, young people, people with access needs or late night workers. And we are looking at working with the officers here to look at what we can do to improve safety and the perception of safety on our transport system. And I'd like to, if we can secure more funding, improve and invest more and put more funding into the West Midlands Safer Travel Partnership. That's something I've earmarked as a transport priority going forward, if and when we can secure some more funds. We're also working closely with around 50 businesses to improve safety and good behaviour on public transport across the region. And we've got a number of groups across the region that we're working with to help deliver that. And we're making some reasonable progress. I would like to operate a nighttime bus service to help with that connectivity that you've suggested. And I know it's been a demand from those that lead across our nighttime economy across the region. I want those new routes to be in place. The reality is at this point in time, the evidence suggests that they wouldn't be economically viable in a strict commercial sense. But we will be looking at, as we progress the franchising route, to ways in which we can support the nighttime economy with bus routes that run through the evening in a way they don't do now. But that model and that modelling needs to be built into the audit and further assessments, simply because on their own those routes aren't necessarily viable at this point in time. So the issues you raised, Councillor Oldham, I think I understand very clearly. They make sense. They are important things to do. We're doing some work currently. I'd like to do more. And my aim and ambition is that a franchise bus service will allow us to do things going ahead that we can't do today, because we'll have choices ourselves about what we do. And if I come back to the fact we currently subsidise National Express by around £50 million a year, I'm hoping that that headroom will give us sufficient ability to operate the types of services that you've referred to safely and reliably.
Any supplementary? No. Councillor Locke and Councillor Singh have indicated to speak, so I'll take Councillor Locke first on this one.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Richard. On there, I should say. I want to emphasise the importance of the nighttime economy in many areas across the West Midlands. And like you've said, there are people that work in public services, hospitals and things like that, and they have to be able to get home. Maybe if there was a reliable bus to get home, they wouldn't have to use the car and bring it into the hospital or wherever. Also, one thing that I feel is very good here in is the passenger safety officers, and that may be an idea for the future to fund a shift of officers for the night time, so to ensure safety for passengers going home.
And could I call Councillor Singh in, and could you answer both questions together, Mayor?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mayor. I know you've touched on the buses for the night time, but so for example for Wolverhampton we've got the halls, and there's a huge footfall, and during the evening when the events actually closing, you see a lot of visitors running, dashing for the trains, because of the last train is, I think it's either 12:30 or 1 o'clock. And so they haven't got enough time to actually have a bite to eat or to sit down and then catch the train. Do you have any plans for extending times or for the actual train network to actually increase their extended times on us, mainly on a weekend, Friday, Saturday nights? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. I've done it myself and I missed the train the last time I was there. But back to Birmingham. So we are currently in discussion with the transport operators about having a bus and rail system that works for us all. I have less control over the trains than I would like, but certainly going forward, and this applies to both Councillor Locke's question and yours, we need to ensure we need to ensure that we have a transport system that works through the day and the evening, supporting those events. And actually, some of our town centres and our city centres would be far more prosperous, far more attractive to visitors if they have that better connectivity. So there's no doubt about that. So it is on the agenda as part of those discussions of framing a new transport system. It's likely to take a bit of time, so it's not a quick fix. But once we have a new approach to a railway system, and we have a choice over timetables in a real way, and in fact we can actually take some responsibility for that ourselves, and that's where we need to be. On Councillor Lott's question on passenger safety officers, again, Councillor Lott, that's something that I will raise with officers here and look at what we can do in the future. Yep, with the resources that we've got. Thank you.
Thank you. Now going to section 15 and concessionary passes for veterans and councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Chair. I was approached by a ecology colleague, Councillor Bigger, on this question. And she was saying that not everybody leaving the 40s has a home to go to or a supported family. And a pass would help with connectivity, mental health, especially during the transition to civilian life. The Combined Authority currently provides certain groups with a concession which entitles them to free or discounted travel. Could concessionary passes for working age military veterans be considered, being aware of the costs of that?
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. So the issue of supporting our armed forces and retired members is really important, and I'm really pleased with the status we've got here as a combined authority in terms of supporting the Armed Forces Covenant. And indeed, I've recently connected some of the people across the region that support armed forces veterans with the Veterans Minister, who is a Selly Oak MP, as you may well know. So we're doing our work to support veterans more widely across housing and skills, which is really, really important in helping those people that put their lives on the line for the country get the support they need to make the best of themselves in the next phase of their lives. In terms of public transport, we have many requests from groups that feel left out or marginalised and not getting access to the transport system as they might wish. And I think we've had, even since I was elected, around 15 requests from groups that would like specific treatment. We have to operate within financial constraints, which are probably the most limiting factor about our ability to open up new concessionary fares and routes. And when we get hopefully to a franchising system and we have more resources in the system, there are other groups I would like to operate and offer free or concessionary fares to, and veterans is one of them. At this point in time, we don't have the resources for that. But I would also like to say that there are other routes for members of the armed forces can access, even on a temporary basis, concessionary travel. We have a fantastic scheme in this region called Workwise, which supports people, and particularly young people, who have got, for the first time, are accessing training or a job and actually don't have the cash flow, the resources to get from where they live to where they need to get to. And those discounted travel fares are available up to a 3-month period. It's making a massive difference to those people that sometimes wouldn't be able to take up those opportunities without that support. And that support is available, for those concessionary fares are available to veterans too. And there are also some other concessionary travel schemes that are available, like the English National Concessionary Travel Scheme, that I understand veterans can apply to. So there are routes for veterans to get support. I'm sorry, at this point in time, it's not something we can offer discreetly to veterans on a public transport system, because frankly, we don't have the revenues to support it. But I'm hoping that when we do, we can start to look more comprehensively at the support that we can provide them.
Okay, I think we've got time for one last quick question. So I'm going to ask Councillor Clements in again. It's up to you whether you ask 7 or 11, Councillor Clements, but I would suggest question 11, because I think the Mayor has covered question 7 quite comprehensively.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks, Mayor Parker. I'm very conscious of time, so I had 2 questions. One was about the local transport plan, and the other one was about our response to climate change. And I just want to reassurance that you back the ambition of our local transport plan, which considers in great detail how we decarbonise the transport system and make sure that what we do on transport contributes to meeting our net zero targets. Because I have a slightly difference of opinion to some other colleagues. I don't think demand for public transport is going down. I think it's going up. I think it's distributed differently across the day. And if you look at things like cycling in the LTP, it tells us that we actually need a 700% increase in cycling to make a significant impact in decarbonising the transport system. So we've got, you know, a challenging agenda there, you know, and the LTP actually asks big questions about how we move around and how much moving around we need to do. What, you know, what is the future of our mobility? So just want reassurance that, you know, that you're, you know, being fully briefed on that, and that you support the objectives of that plan, which are all about, again, you know, providing a transport system that works for our residents and gets them where they need to go for education, training and employment. Thanks.
Thank you, Liz, and for reminding us of the ambition of that plan and its importance. So we will be, I know that plan has gone through several layers of organisation and level approval, and there'll be several decisions to be made about it. Now, what we need to do, I'll go back to the pragmatics, is once we've got the outcome of the budget on the 30th of October, we will start to have more visibility about the resources we've got, particularly under the second phase of the City Regional and Sustainable Transport Plan or Settlement, and that will be used to forge the implementation strategy. But be under no doubt, our plan has to be, and our commitment needs to have to be, creating an integrated transport system that works for people in this region and encourages people, you know, out of their cars onto buses and other cycling, other forms of transport. So that strategy and that belief and commitment to that remains sacrosanct. We're also committed to doing what else we can across our broader economy to achieve net zero. Transport is an element of it, but I've already mentioned the investment zones. Two of those investment zones are exactly addressing what we need to do to invest in our economy. So our economy also supports a transport system that works for everyone. So the investment zone in Coventry in the southeast of the region is largely driven by modern manufacturing and battery production and the electrification of our economy, which is absolutely fabric to create an economy that where we do have cars on our road, that they are not polluting the environment. And indeed, the investment zone in Wolverhampton is around a green innovation corridor, looking at other techniques, whether it's in construction or doing business, around research and development, which will help our economy and the people in this region transition from the jobs they're in now into ones that support an economy of the future, which is driven by electricity. So our transport plan and the great work done is really important, and we'll stick to that. The delivery and priority projects will need to be reconciled with the funding that we've got, but the ambition remains the same, the commitment remains the same. But I also wanted to reassure you that the broader investment we're making in our economy here is about helping this region transition, so it's at the forefront of an economy of the future that's driven by electricity and electrification rather than fossil fuels.
Right, thank you, Mayor. And that concludes the Journeys for Everyone section. Councillor Burrow, as I said, will take over the next section, but I suggest we all break for coffee and a comfort break and be back sitting in our seats by 22:12, because the Mayor does have a hard deadline or something. Thank you.